Hey, what's up, everybody? We're watching this video about SoulFrame. I've actually seen, I think I saw the gameplay like a few months ago, and then I saw the trailer for it. So I'm actually pretty excited for this game because I've obviously played Warframe. And then also, the game did look interesting, but the combat kind of looked like iffy with the boss fights. But I like the idea. You'll see when we watch.
All right, hello everyone, welcome back. Last time we covered SoulFrame was a few months ago, back during TennoCon when they revealed some extended gameplay footage, which unfortunately got a rather poor reception, if you don't recall. Now this was mainly due to there being quite a few rough and buggy looking animations
that shit was annoying too. The
video.
light effects
Even with those
weird.
issues, there was a lot I liked about the reveal. The tone and setting, the characters and the environment, and just the general structure of the game that they were showing, what they're working on.
And
to me, much of this was appealing, but at the same time, janky combat animations, floaty character movement, NPCs glitching through the terrain, and a handful of other things were quite rough in a few spots, no doubt about it. Well, over the past months, on a few occasions, they have been directly addressing much of this feedback, and based on what we are seeing here, it looks like they're actually making steps in the right direction. Combat and movement already look much better, and I mean, given that the game is still a ways out, not planned to even enter early access until later in 2025, there is still plenty of time for even further improvements, so I remain hopeful here. I'm really hoping that they turn SoulFrame, or at least the public perception of SoulFrame, they turn it around and the game ends up in a really good spot by the time we get our hands on it. So let's go ahead and take a look at all this new stuff, what we have learned, and what they have worked on in these past few months.
I'll be honest, like, they haven't started advertising, so really the only people that know about SoulFrame are the, people who are really into Warframe that also happen to like Souls-like games. So it's not like they've ruined their rep.
So the first update we got came from a devlog in mid-September, and one of the initial things they discussed right out the gate here was the fact that they have been listening to feedback and have been polishing combat, saying, "We are putting a lot of work into updating combat. You know, there is a little bit of jank still in there, but we want to get it out." Going on further to specify that they have done a bunch of animation updates, fine-tuning things across the board. Enemies got a hit react pass, which should help improve the sense of feedback and impact when they are struck. And then on a technical level, they've implemented a new feature called root motion warping, which extends transition animations to help eliminate the presence of sliding. Now, this was one of the bigger complaints from that gameplay reveal, where there were moments that the player character appeared to kind of be skating around the environment.
I think that's because they're using probably similar coding to Warframe, because I think Warframe has that. I might be wrong, but because of how much sliding and movement there is, you probably don't really notice it, but you're literally slip and sliding through everything.
And as a result, didn't feel really grounded in the world. Now, as I pointed out in my last video, this whole thing reminded me very much so of Warframe, where that kind of sliding occurs quite frequently, but maybe just isn't as noticeable given the general high speed of movement and combat in that game. Whereas here in SoulFrame, with the speed of everything reined in quite a bit, the sliding around just sticks out way more. So this new feature, this root motion warping, is going to do things like extend the animation of a jump when leaping towards distant enemies so that there is less noticeable sliding in between those transitions.
Can we just talk about how this scene right here looks so clean? Like, I know graphics are obviously not everything, they come secondary to gameplay, but just like with good gameplay and then this scenery is just that's so good.
And while moving around. Another thing they mentioned was that during TennoCon's showcase, there were some enemies that were falling through the mesh, essentially melting into the ground when they died. And they've since added collision to ragdolls so that this particular issue no longer happens. And when wrapping up the discussion about the combat improvements and polish that they've made, they said, "Preludes means pre-alpha. There is a bit of forgiveness you need to give us. Sometimes going super detailed on some combat skating, for example, is not worth it versus, say, getting the RPG progression systems in, which is kind of our goal for the next test." And I mean, he's not wrong. Fine-tuned
Yeah, like, I'm gonna be honest, the things that were wrong with the game weren't like crazy. The boss fight was kind of where I was like, because it was kind of just like, it was really plain from what I remember, the way the combat was, and it just seemed like a lot of the effects were really cheap.
Polishing isn't the first priority in game development. In fact, oftentimes it's one of the last. But also, they chose to show the game in its current state, so they certainly did this knowingly, right? Getting feedback that an unfinished version of your...
Yeah, and it's like, they could have literally said, like, I don't know, they might... Like, I know they probably did, like, a little, oh, you know, all this is a work in progress, but they should have, like, specifically said, hey, combat isn't right where we want it to be, but please comment and stuff, but don't expect this to be what it is at the end, if that was something that they were insecure about. Which obviously they
game
must have been.
Looks unfinished.
Unless
shouldn't
they're
be
just
all that
capping.
surprising. And mind you, I don't think they're surprised. In fact, they're not surprised at all. They've said as much that this feedback is welcome and expected. The reaction to SoulFrame's gameplay reveal is an expected side effect when showing the public footage of something this early in development. From the onset, though, they have said that their whole plan was to get the community involved as early as possible. And in that spirit, they're clearly willing to show us gameplay footage that is far from complete. And so, yeah, the feedback that the gameplay footage last time looked unpolished, had lots of issues, not too surprising, goes without saying, and it seems like they're working on it. Now, at the end of the video, they had a quick Q&A during which we got some info. They've got multiple new weapons in queue, including a mace and greatsword, and eventually the plan is to have hundreds of different weapons and fighting styles available in the game, so there should be loads of variety here. In fact, they're even intending to add a whole lot more ranged and magic options in the future, as so far we have predominantly pretty much been seeing mostly melee. Fast travel is something that will be coming down the road when the game is big enough, which right now it really isn't. It's a fairly confined area with some dungeons inside of it. But in the meantime, they do have some additional traversal stuff like mounts being added to the game shortly. They also plan to start showcasing a lot more of the multiplayer elements of SoulFrame, as they wanted to drive home that this is very much an MMO light in a similar vein to something like Destiny, where you're going to come across other players in the world with whom you can group up. But up until this point, you know, we've mostly been seeing solo gameplay footage. And then they also revealed that the official forums are now live for anyone. You don't need to be part of the ongoing test in order to access these. You can just jump in and read what people are talking about. Now, as for the currently play-tested game, the people who are in the Preludes version happening right now, they mentioned adding some new content to that latest build, with more encounters, secrets, and puzzles being added to the game's dungeons, as well as more environmental clues hinting at nearby secrets and objectives that a lot of players were missing. And then following that video update last month in October, we got an hour-long live stream, which not only gave us a ton more info, but also came with a bunch of new gameplay footage as well. So they kicked things off with actually giving a sort of a brief recap of what kind of game SoulFrame is, which they currently describe it as an MMO light with a dense overworld full of activities. There's progression gating, so you're going to have to complete certain tasks or reach certain levels to access different areas. They've got dungeons with procedural layouts, similar to how it's done in Warframe. You'll move through hallways and rooms and different sections that will be placed in procedural ways so that every run feels a little different. They're also calling this a fantasy looter with a big co-op and multiplayer focus. To quote here, they said, so you play it, you rank up, you get loot, you progress your character and get more powerful. You earn different packs in the game, which are kind of like our classes. Then they go on to say that they're going to be MMO-like towns or social hubs where you will see other players and talk to NPCs. It's got a time of day system as well as weather and events that take place. And at least currently in this iteration of the game's testing, it is PC.
Can we just talk about how this part just like literally reminds me of the beauty of Red Dead Redemption 2, like going through the forest?
Only, but will be coming to consoles down the road as they get closer to official release. So that is like the high level overview. Next, they specifically talked about the feedback that they got from TennoCon and what they've been doing to address it. Most of which was just sort of a rehashing of what we covered from the prior video. But there's a blurb here pulled from recent patch notes that I think puts a bow on this whole topic in terms of what they've been doing. So they say that combat continues to undergo reworks, focusing on smoother transitions, improved hit reactions, and enhanced visuals and mechanical clarity of attacks. Expect less sliding, reduced clipping, and more grounded, connected movement with refined root motion warping tied to lock-on targeting. AI combat has seen improvements with enhanced ragdoll physics and increased responsiveness and fluidity. So there you go. Again, kind of puts a bow on the whole thing. These are all the things that they've worked on in the months since that gameplay reveal. And from what we've seen, it does look much better. During the live stream, they also reiterated the fact that the game is still in early production and that any feedback is welcome, saying, I think the big thing is that we are in pre-alpha. Some of the really negative feedback I got was like, what are you doing? And the answer is, we actually want to hear the good and the bad up front. The worst thing that we could do, at least in terms of how DE works, is to go dark for a very long period of time. So we're going to be showing you warts and all. Going on to add that this really is the point of this pre-alpha testing and of showing these gameplay videos early on to get that player feedback on issues and concerns as soon as possible. And so, you know, this is great, honestly. Clearly, they're not shy about showing off the game that's still a work in progress. In fact, in this very stream, there were multiple points with bugs, glitches, and stuff occurring, like NPCs not acting properly, animations bugging out, characters all over the place, not where they're supposed to be. In fact, the game even hard crashed at one point during the stream. So they're not shying away from the fact that the game still has a lot of work to be done. And as far as I'm concerned, let them cook. Make the game as good as it can be. I'll play it in 2025 when it's more polished and finished, right? Now, best of all from the stream, though, was the fact that they had gameplay running in the background for like a solid 45 minutes, during which we got a much better sense of how the open world is structured, as well as getting a closer look at those updates to combat. So the gameplay showcase featured a pair of players walking around, exploring, and doing a few things. Forgive the quality here, by the way. The stream itself was capped at 1080p, the bitrate wasn't great, and the whole thing was cropped, making it even smaller. So this stuff is going to look very muddy, just how it is with the video quality that we got. So during these 45 minutes, we saw the pair clearing some camps of enemies, at which point, yes, we got a good look at the combat in action, and it does look a lot smoother than it did in that showcase during TennoCon. We saw them collecting loot by opening these chests. We saw them rescuing caged animals and setting them free. They completed a couple of public events. They came across a town at one point. They visited the Nightfold a few times, which this is basically like your home base where you've got crafting vendors. You can visit them whenever you're not in combat. It's got this cool transition animation of you doing like a trust fall into the ground and then appearing in this area. And yeah, you unlock NPCs as you play, getting access to their stations and locations, giving you more systems to play with. In fact, at one point during the stream, they did the whole quest line to unlock the blacksmith, which involved finding this helm and then carrying it to a nearby building where they found the NPC with some fighting that occurred in between. We also got a sneak peek of the social hub that has quest NPCs, vendors, and this is where other players will be running around. And they showed us a little bit of the underground cave system. These are located beneath elder trees found in the world, and this is where the big bear creature is going to be found. Now, as the stream went on, not only were they playing the game, but they also were talking about it, sharing some info about their plans and goals. They said that with SoulFrame, they really intend to lean very heavily into these action RPG elements. They're going to have different skill trees for each weapon class, so as you use a weapon, you're going to level it up, and then you get points which you use to unlock new abilities and functionality in that weapon's trees. So for example, for the long blades, we saw the skills to unlock the ability to parry, to do a weapon throw, to increase your stagger damage and bonus crit, just to name a few. The packs, these are basically like class archetypes, and they come with their own skill tree as well as a unique pack weapon, and this acts as like a secondary weapon that can be used as a weapon, but it is also used to cast many of your pack skills. So for example, here it would be like the Fey Pact fulfills this stealth archer fantasy. You have access to this special ancestral bow, and you use it to attack enemies, but you can also turn yourself into a butterfly, which acts as your invisibility, letting you sneak up and backstab enemies. And then also in terms of abilities, they have gone back and forth between having cooldowns or filling a resource in combat, which you use to cast your skills. As of now, they are settling on the cooldown system, so you will cycle between different cooldowns while in combat. And they spent some time talking about the fact that they're trying to find a balance between self-discovery and exploration while not being too obtuse. They actually referenced the fact that from surveys of recent tests, a lot of players didn't even realize that they had a crafting system in the game, presumably because they don't have some like main story quest line that gives you a direct marked location of exactly where you go and how you unlock the blacksmith. Instead, it was just something that you had to stumble across in the world. They're going to be fine-tuning this because while they still want the sense of exploration and discovery, people should know that there's blacksmithing in the game and crafting.
Yeah, or like just at the start, like right when they spawn in, like there'd be like a paper that says blacksmith in this town or whatever, however it's gonna work. And then they're like, oh, okay, put that in their satchel, and then they're like, oh, I'm in that town. Cool. Where's that blacksmith?
And if they don't stumble across it, completely missing out on an entire progression system, not great, right? So they're still working on that. They want the exploration, they want the discovery, they don't want to be too obtuse about this stuff. All right, we got some details at the end of the stream from a quick Q&A. This revealed that there is going to be player trading, so you can get items and then trade it with other players, and that they're going to be ramping up testing very soon, increasing the number of players invited every week. Plus, on top of that, going forward, anyone who gets an invite in the future is also going to receive 4 extra keys whom they can give to whoever they like. So there's a lot more people are going to be getting into the game in the not too distant future. Then after that stream, most recently, just a few days ago, we got a second devlog, and here's what info we got there. We saw some showcases of that root warping tech in action, which again is there to help reduce that sense of skating or sliding around. When you're attacking a target with something like a lunge, it's going to extend the transition of that animation so that there's less sliding before and after it takes place. They've done additional combat and AI improvements. These include an increase in simultaneous enemy attacks with smoother weapon equipping and improved positioning during fights. Enemy patrols now feature varied starting and ending points. This prevents endless circling. AI behavior, navigation, and animations have all been refined with new flinch reactions, enhanced movement, and that root warping to deliver a more grounded and fluid feeling combat. Enemies now also display a stagger UI that fills during battle. They've overhauled the entire stagger system in conjunction with the animation side of improved hit.
What was like the point of going invisible there?
It reacts. The degree of any hit react is going to depend on the type of attack you strike them with, whether it's a slash from your weapon, a kick, or casting a spell. And then the higher the damage, the harder hitting the strike, basically, the enemies are going to react accordingly, as you would expect. And they talk about having reined in the previously strong two-tone color grading in the game to try to make the visuals appear a bit more natural. At the end of this, we got another Q&A. Some tidbits from that include they're going to be opening up the game to a much wider audience in 2025. Previously, they were planning this for 2024, but as we have covered here, they've been busy doing a lot of work to improve and polish the combat animations and all of that, so this got pushed out a bit. And then presumably at some point in 2025, the opening up of access is going to include either open test or founders packs that you could buy to get early access. In the meantime, though, as mentioned, they're ramping up invites and they're giving out 4 friends and family keys to anyone who gets invited, inviting even more people. They reiterated the fact that despite Soul being in the game name, this is not meant to be a Souls-born, Souls-like game in the vein of a Dark Souls or Elden Ring.
See, I thought it was because of the way the combat was shown in that first thing, like that first video, and that's how everyone described it. That's why I was like, oh, made by the people who made Warframe, SoulFrame. So it's going to be like Warframe's, like, you know, take on SoulFrame, on Souls-like. So I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You know what I mean?
That's not the kind of game they're making. It's more traditional action RPG with heavy
like
through lines to a game like Warframe. You've got the open world areas, you've got the social hubs, you've got
actually, you know what? What's the difference then? Because isn't this just another Warframe game, but like more, instead of sci-fi, more fantasy, like traditional fantasy, I guess?
With procedural layouts and everything that we've discussed. And in terms of multiplayer and playing with your friends, the current max group size that they're planning is 4 people. They are going to have the social hubs that where you can meet up with other people. And then also, while you're out exploring the world, they're going to have some system where you can see the souls of other players, and they're working on ways you'll be able to interact with or invite them to your party. We also got from the most recent test some public patch notes, not under NDA. This is all available just right on the SoulFrame website. And a couple of interesting things from here. There's the new arts system, so packs and weapons can now be leveled up through combat to unlock unique arts. Weapon arts allow envoys to customize their playstyle with specialized bonuses like smite, perfect throw, and more. Looks like they are going with the classic RPG weapon rarity and colors, so weapons fall into these rarity tiers with common, uncommon, and rare. There's also going to be these virtue and skill requirements for
back to the days of being like that 0.1% legendary. I didn't fucking get it. I got this stupid rare.
Each tier, if a virtue requirement is unmet, you deal 50% less damage. So it's not going to be something that prevents you from using these weapons, but you won't be as effective unless you reach certain stat thresholds, essentially. And they added a few more new weapons to the game, including a swift sword, daggers, a polearm, a new sword and shield, and...
Wait, what? Sorry. So we have 3 swords. We have a sword, a swift sword, and then a sword and shield. Like that you don't like you don't just like apply things to the sword. You need like 6 different swords.
A brand new bow.
That's
so with
crazy.
all that said, I gotta say the TennoCon showcase had its issues without question. A lot of it looked really janky, but I think they've done a good job of addressing that feedback so far. Namely, they've not shied away from it. If anything, they've been embracing the complaints, saying, yeah, we totally agree, this stuff needs work. And in just the handful of months since that TennoCon gameplay, we can see those improvements in action. Like these latest gameplay reveals, the stuff from these dev vlogs, as well as the stuff from that live stream, this all already looks better. And it's only been a couple of months of them working on making it better. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, dude. I think the game is looking pretty good, frankly. As mentioned, many more people are going to be getting their hands on SoulFrame very soon in the coming weeks and months. They are inviting more testers as well as giving those 4 bonus keys that they can hand out to anyone. When that happens, by the way, I'd recommend going to the subreddit or forums because people are probably going to be giving these away if they don't have 4 friends readily available who would want to take them. So odds are if you want to try the game, you're going to have the opportunity to do so very soon. Like I said, I remain hopeful. I'm pretty impressed with how they have received the feedback and addressed a lot of these issues. I mean, they pretty much immediately went forward and did something to address the sliding issue, the lack of groundedness, the skating around the environment. Like that's like one of the first things that they address, and they've clearly already made improvements on. That's impressive, right? As mentioned, the game is in pre-alpha, still a long ways to go. Early access launch isn't happening until probably later in 2025. I'm keeping my hopes up for SoulFrame. Not gonna lie, I really am. I mean, Warframe has proven that this developer will stick to a game and continue to add to and improve it over time. That game's been going strong for 10 plus years. Maybe they'll be able to do the same with SoulFrame as well. But already, I like what I've seen in such a short window. They revealed something. Feedback wasn't great. They addressed the feedback head on. It's looking better. That's about all you can ask for as far as I'm concerned. So there you go. That's going to do it for today. That is the update on SoulFrame. Stay tuned. I will certainly be talking about and covering this game more in the future, but that does it for now. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all later.
So yeah, as you guys saw, it looks pretty good. Like this new thing. I didn't see that stream. I missed that, unfortunately, but I did see the gameplay before and how like it was good, but there were some bad things about it. But from the gameplay that he showed from that stream, and then he also showed some gameplay, obviously, from that original video that I'm talking about, I'm actually pretty surprised that they actually changed quite a bit in such a short time. It looks pretty good. Like, I'm going to play it, at least try it. I don't know if it's going to be free or cost money. I'm assuming it's going to cost money unless they figure out a way to kind of monetize it like they did with Warframe. But yeah, I'm going to check it out, see how good it is. I did like a lot of the things they changed. I like how they made it more ground. It kind of makes it a little bit more separate from Warframe. It doesn't seem like it's, you know, like the same game tied with another thing. Like, honestly, if before with all the sliding and a lot of the other, like the way the characters moved in the animations, it screamed more Warframe, where this kind of screams more of its own thing now, which is nice because it's like, why would I, you know, play this game when I already have Warframe? You know what I'm saying? Including since they said it's not even a Souls-like. This is literally going to be like Warframe, like an RPG, except it's going to be more open world, I assume, because obviously in Warframe it's kind of more like there are open world aspects, but it's more scenario based, like, oh, you know, you go on this mission together or with random people. But yeah, no, I'm pretty excited. I wasn't really a fan of the weapon, the way they looked, like at least that like show of that greatsword or whatever. Like, I hope there's other variations, because like I get it goes with the vibe, but it just seems like really bland, like that coloring. Like, I would have preferred something like look cooler, like not flashy, obviously, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it just seemed like, it's not my thing, you know what I'm saying? But we'll see. They might change that. They might have different versions. It seems like they're going to go for the Destiny thing, like I was saying with the multiple swords. They're not going to just do one sword and then, you know, you add certain things to make it like faster or do more damage or do this or that. It seems like they're going the thing where, like, you know, you have 6 different SMGs, like in Destiny 2's, for example, and it's like they all do their little own thing. I think Warframe kind of does that too with the different rifles, but those are way more dramatically different, where I feel like Destiny, like all these are all submachine guns. In SoulFrame, these are all swords, but they're all slightly different. And I know there's other weapons from what they were saying. we only seen the sword, obviously, but that's just like what I'm saying. And then obviously the great sword, but that's still kind of a sword, even though it's different. But yeah, tell me what you guys think. That's just what I think. What you guys think, you know, in the comments. Say, you know, tell me if there's anything I missed or if there's any other information you find out. I always respond to the comments. Like, obviously, once we get bigger, it might be hard for me to respond. It's going to be harder for me to respond to each of you, but I try. Anyways, like and subscribe. Also, this guy's really awesome. I watch a lot of his stuff. Force Gaming. Subscribe to him and like, you know, the video. It'll be in the description below. Peace.